Hello and welcome to Introduction to Tuning 101 for the violin. This is for my daughter Riley. This is her violin, her first one, which I just got her for her birthday. She hasn't gotten it yet, but it occurs to me that one of the first things any violinist or fiddle player needs to learn is how to tune the instrument, because that's a critical thing. Now, a brand new one such as this the strings will stretch, the instrument itself stretches, and when it comes brand new, it didn't have the bridge installed. That's this little piece right there. What you do with that, if you're fortunate enough to get a new one that doesn't have that installed, like it comes with it, but it's wrapped up in an envelope or something, you measure down 13 inches from this little ridge here, and you want it to stand up straight and be even there on the violin, and then you start tuning, and you tune, and you tune, and you tune. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt, which is why I'm doing this for Riley first, so that she doesn't have to go through all of this, because she's brand new and this is her first one. Hi, Riley. So there are a lot of different apps for phones and for computers that you can use for violin tuners. There are also a variety of different kinds of tuners that you can buy at music stores, a whole bunch of different types and different price ranges and different features and stuff. Poke around and find what works for you. I'm a cheapskate, so I'm just using a free violin tuner out of the Google Play Store. And that's what the G is supposed to sound like. And I'm a little low. So since it's just barely a little low, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tune it with this tiny little knob down here. This is the fine tuner. These pegs up here are for bigger steps when it's off a lot more than that. And I have been going through that for like the past hour with this. I finally got it to the point where that's maybe not going to be quite so much of an issue now. And we're down to doing some fine tuning. Now, these little fine tuner pegs, they only screw in so far, and then they're as tight as they can go. So if you get to a point where you need to tighten it more to get a higher note, but it doesn't tighten, what you need to do is loosen it all the way, and then come up to the corresponding peg up here and turn that until you get closer, and then set back in with the fine tuning knob down there at the bottom that corresponds to the string that you're working on. It is not uncommon to get confused and be turning on the wrong string or the wrong peg or the wrong screw, and you can't figure out why this note's not changing when actually what you're doing is you're tightening or loosening a completely different string, and that one is changing like crazy, but you don't know it because you're not playing on that one. It's no big deal. It's all part of the learning curve, part of the fun and part of the adventure. Tuning is probably the least amount of fun that you can have with an instrument. Some people would say scales, but I have to disagree, because scales can be fun. And we'll get to that in another lesson. This one's just about tuning, because you can't do scales if your violin or your fiddle is out of tune. I think that's right. The next string is D, and that's a little low too. Oh, that sounds much better. A. Oh, that's way, way off. I got to come up here for this one. Oh, that hit it just perfect. Now this is the E string, the highest one. You want to be very, very careful and tune the E string slowly because it is the thinnest string and the highest note. This is the one that is under the most tension. And what that means is this is the one that's most likely to break. So if you're screwing it down too tightly, too quickly, it could snap, which not only means you have to go out and buy another string, but it's possible you could also be injured by the snapping violin string. So be careful and go slowly on the E string especially. I'm going to do that down here. There we go. Now, I've come across all 4 of them, but remember, this is a brand new instrument, so we go back and repeat the process. Back down to the G string, and I know that sounds funny, but that's what it is, and it's quite possible that just in the time we spent tuning the other 3 strings, that this one has stretched enough that it's no longer in tune, even though we just did that. And that's the problem with brand new instruments. You have to do that a lot. You will also find that if you only take the fiddle out of the case once a week or so and play it like that, it will be more out of tune all the time, and it will be harder to get it to hold a tune long enough for you to be able to practice anything. If, however, you're using it and tuning it every day, it breaks it in a lot quicker, and soon you'll have consistently where you might not even have to tweak any of the strings for weeks and weeks on end because they're holding their tune, and that's what it's going to do, but they don't come out of the box that way. It takes them some time to break it in right. And see, that is a little off, kind of low again. Now, the problem with using this kind of tuner is you have to already have a pretty well-trained ear to be able to hear the note it's supposed to be and recognize the note that it is and which direction it needs to go in order to hit the right note and when exactly it's hitting the right note. That might be difficult for beginners. It was difficult for me in the beginning. I've got a better ear than that these days, so I go with this. But there are some that have like a little needle that'll point at the right note so that you've got a visual indicator. You're not just relying on your ears. You've got a little readout. There are also some that tell you how many hertz each thing is playing, or you tell it what thing to play. And the G string is 196 hertz. The D string is 293.6. The A string is 440. And the E string is 659.2. That could be handy or useful to somebody in a science setting, or depending on what kind of tuner you're able to find, just for general knowledge. No, that's way off. That's probably too high. Loosen it just a little bit there. And then tighten it down here on the fine tuner. And then we're going to go back down to G. And it's too low again. So again, we're tightening the little one. Okay, D again. D is holding. A is not. Hardly hear this. Ta-da! It held its tune all the way through. So that's the basics of how to get started with tuning. Not really much more you need to know on that regard. There are other lessons to come. Hello, Riley. Hope you enjoy learning to tune.